Hey guys, welcome to another Intro to Maya tutorial here. What I want to do is start to work with what's called Booleans. There's union, difference, and intersection ways. Those are kind of sub-selections that you can create from what's called a Boolean. Now, typically when you think about Booleans in modeling or polymodeling, create something here, you think about ways that you can combine objects or have two objects have an effect on each other. So I have created two objects here. And let me create some more. I'm just going to kind of push them around different axes here, on different ways on the y-axis anyways. And now I've got this arrangement here of different shapes. Let's say I want to manipulate these two shapes. I want them to be the same thing. And I want to move them, I want to rotate them together and keep them attached. I can shift select them like this and I can move them around just fine. That's fine. But when it comes to other things like rotating, notice how they all rotate on their own axes, their own rotation point, pivot point, I guess I should say. So that's a problem. And then when it comes to adding materials, if these objects had the same materials, it'd be much easier just to apply it to the same object as if they were together. So let's do that. Let's combine these two objects. I've selected my cone, then my cube. I have them selected both here. I'm going to go up to Mesh, Boolean, Union. Now it calls it pcone2. Now the whole thing is highlighted green. I can move it around like before. I can now rotate before, and I can also scale them together at the same time rather than being separate objects. Let me get rid of my grid here. And if I were to scale these, see how this sphere kind of swallows up everything else? Not cool. So let's say I wanted to, actually I'm going to just combine this object, cylinder, and the sphere together. And I'm going to create a mesh Boolean union on those. Now it's P cylinder 2. Now when I go to scale it, scales together. Much more easier to manage and move around to a new object now. Notice that it also keeps your original cone up here and your original cube as well. So what I could do is select it individually and rotate it just and tweak it how I want to here. Same thing goes with the cone part, but I can't select it here in the viewport, must select it over here. Now I can tweak this and move it about as needed. So you can still tweak and you can still manage to scale some of these things as well, rotate them and move them and whatnot. So you have transform controls over these objects. You can shift them around, but they're still the same object. I can go back and rotate them however I need to. So very interesting. Now there's different properties of working with a Boolean that we can get into. This torus, for instance, is not a part of this. Let's say I wanted to create the difference. I want to I'll show you both ways. Torus as my main object first, and I'm going to shift select this P cylinder 2. Mesh, Boolean, difference. And what's happened here is it's taken the difference of the two objects, combined objects, and cut away from the torus and left the impression of that cylinder there. And do that. Let me do it the opposite way now. I'm going to choose this as my main object, shift select torus, mesh, Booleans, difference. Now I have the impression of a cutaway portion of the torus that was right here along this cylinder. So, very interesting. Now, let's say I wanted to create something. Let's create these two objects together. So let's push this down. Make this one complete object here. Mesh, Boolean, union. Oh, it didn't work because I didn't select them both. Mesh, Boolean, union. Now it's one complete object. And I can still go through and choose to manipulate just this. Look how it changes the effect of that torus down below. Very interesting. Different ways that you can manipulate these objects. Same thing goes for this up here. Still move these around. Even P-cone 2, which was the combined shape here. You still have manipulation over your original shapes, as well as your whole object. So, there's one more left to talk about, and that is how you can manipulate shapes with intersection. I'm going to create a cube here and scale it up. What an intersection will do is basically just take into account the parts that are the actual geometry that is intersecting each other. So I'm going to select this cube, shift select this object back here, mesh, Boolean, intersection. Only the parts that were actually combined geometry are saved here. So now I have this kind of rounded kind of die shape, ready to play some D&D, right? So that works either way, no matter which object you have selected first, whether it's this one or this one, it doesn't matter because it's only going to take into account the geometry that where it is actually intersecting each other. So do it skin, Boolean, intersection, and there we go. So that is working with Booleans, working with connecting objects, and working with finding the differences of objects like so. Let me create another one here. Let's find the difference of this with this object here. Mesh, Boolean, difference. Now I've got a cutaway point from that cone into this crazy looking die. A lot of ways to manipulate and construct an object by using other objects to influence it. And that's pretty much it with Booleans. We'll get into that more later with new techniques and how we can combine different techniques together. So that's all for now, and thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.